First, it was the ACLU that filed a class action lawsuit against the Arizona Department of Corrections. Tonight, a second human rights group is calling the treatment of prisoners into question. Amnesty International has released a detailed report and is calling on Arizona to curb what it calls the inhumane use of solitary confinement. Investigative reporter Wendy Halloran has been investigating the DOC for more than a year and was the first reporter to get her hands on this report. Wendy?
Well, in Sue, Amnesty International calls Arizona's excessive use of solitary confinement shocking and unacceptable. But the problem is the DOC maintains it doesn't use solitary confinement, but that depends on who you ask.
If you don't fix it, people are going to die.
SMU Special Management Unit. You're looking at pods, clusters, and the layout of maximum security cells inside the Florence prison. This area holds troublesome inmates from the prison's general population, as well as inmates on protective segregation, sex offenders, and the mentally ill. Amnesty International calls this area cruel isolation. The report found symptoms of solitary confinement in the special management units. Prisoners spend nearly 24 hours a day in small, windowless cells with little access to natural light or fresh air. They have no access to work, education, or rehabilitation programs. They're only allowed to leave their cells a maximum of 3 hours a week for up to 2 hours each time to shower and exercise alone in a small fenced dirt area. Visits with lawyers or family take place behind a screen with no physical contact. However, the Corrections Department is quick to point out that it does not have solitary confinement, at least not something called solitary confinement. ToersBijns is a retired deputy warden from the prison in Florence.
Solitary confinement is not a custody level. It's a series of conditions imposed on human beings that makes it abusive, neglectful, and to some degree torturous.
The report says prisoners have described the conditions as unbearable, many suffering from staph infections and skin conditions.
These cells are filthy. They have an accumulation of blood, feces, urine, and all kind of other things that have accumulated over the years.
The DOC provided 12 News with these photos and says its standards are clean housing units and cells.
And if those pictures that you say you have doesn't reflect it, it's because they didn't take you to the right place.
And then there's mentally ill inmates. Amnesty International claims the isolation causes psychological harm, making their conditions worse.
That's the detrimental part of special management units. Mental health persons have no business being inside of there because they deteriorate. They don't get better. And they are eventually released into the community no better than when they came in.
Retired Deputy Warden ToersBijns remembers one mentally ill inmate sitting in his cell, naked with severely swollen, blistered feet and covered in his own feces. That inmate had been kept in isolation for 5 years for holding a nurse hostage. And perhaps the most disturbing example is that of mentally ill inmate Mark Tucker, who somehow set himself on fire in the special management unit, suffering burns over 80% of his body. For that, he was charged with arson and sentenced to more time. ToersBijns has some words of advice for his former boss, DOC Director Charles Ryan.
If Mr. Ryan is listening to this, I would say take a close look at your SMUs. You can't meet your mandate for conditions of confinement to give them showers, to give them recreation, to give them the proper escort to and from medical and mental health. You're crunching people and you're getting behind, and when that happens, solitary confinement creeps in, and that's the condition that Amnesty International is talking about.
Now, DOC tells me they can't comment on the report because of ongoing litigation. Now, it's important to note that Amnesty International has not actually gone inside the prisons. They requested a tour last year but were denied. DOC says it's due to scheduling conflicts. The Amnesty International report is based on interviews and previous lawsuits against DOC. Wendy Halloran, 12 News.